They came, they saw, they conquered. Hey everybody, welcome to After Action Report, your recap show for all SmackDown matches to keep you caught up on all the action. I'm your host Megs here for the Call to Action podcast channel, here breaking down the stats and storylines from Friday Night Titans episode 22. The two matches that we saw this past week were supposed to be part of the Collision event, which was not able to happen, but that did not disappoint because we got to see a teams match with two teams that were 2-0 vying to stay perfect on this season. And then we also saw the long-awaited IG Championship match. Without further ado, let's jump right into the episode. First, we saw a face-off before the first match with Adam Collins and JTE having a dance-off to set off the tone for our first teams match. So we are going to get to see Coast to Coast facing off against the Movement, and pictures just cannot justify or show fully what all happened during that first scene, so go back and watch it for yourself. It was something, I will just say that. But let's jump right into our match, which is, as I said, Coast to Coast facing off against the Movement, both teams being 2-0, seeing if they can extend that to 3-0. Coming out of round one, Coast to Coast is up by 4, 22-18. Oyama, Collins, and Preston all go perfect with the bonus question for 11 points each, and JTE coming up with 7 points in that round. So we see that JTE used two of his own rules on this round on two separate questions, being able to gain one additional point off of one of those questions that he used the repeat on. In round two, Coast to Coast defers to the Movement, and they take Ed Harris on their first spin, and they are able to sweep the round for the full 10 points. On Coast to Coast spin, they spin away from Marvel, but end up landing on Marvel again to end up with that category for their round, where they come away with 8 out of 10 points. Checking down the multiple choice on one question, they miss it, and it is stolen for a 1-point steal. This gives the Movement a gain of 3 points, but Coast to Coast is still up by 1, 30-29, where in the third round, JTE hits a 2-pointer in Sly and Arnie, Collins hits his 2-pointer in Biopics, that bounces it back over to the Movement, where Preston has to hit a 3-pointer in Matt and Ben. He misses it, and that forces the Movement to have to answer a 5-pointer in Dramas, which they miss. This gives Coast to Coast the win, with a final score of 32-31. Where Coast to Coast answered 27 of 28 questions for 96% accuracy and scored 94% of 34 available points. The Movement answered 25 of 30 questions for 83% accuracy and scored 72% of 43 available points. As I said before, JTE did have some struggles there in round one, having to use up a couple repeats to try and keep things as close as possible. But Coast to Coast was not giving up any room because they only ended up missing one question during the entire match. And speaking of that question, had Coast to Coast not checked down, and if the Movement had been able to steal for the full 2 points going into that third round, they would have actually been tied. So by checking down the multiple choice, they ensured that the Movement would not have been able to gain the lead or at least tie. And with the final round going the way it did, Coast to Coast would have had to have answered at least one more question in that final round in order to gain the victory, with Preston still missing that 3-pointer, putting Coast to Coast in a position where they could have taken the lead back. So now Coast to Coast maintains a perfect win streak on this season, now being 3-0. No word yet on whether or not they will get another match before the end of our season, but still impressive to see these two former singles champions making an impressive run in the teams division. This now takes us to the midpoint in the event, and after the break, we get a quick scene before we jump into our main event, where we see Kaiser keeping Smet psyched up and his head in the game, but Barker comes in talking smack before the match. So we see that Smets is still concerned about his former faction mate, and while Kaiser shares some of those sentiments, he needs his boy laser focused in because Parker is not going to make this easy on him. And we find out from a promo package, which I didn't properly remember, these two have met before, but it was in a fan-ran league. before either of them came into the MTS proper, where Parker did beat Smets in an IG match. And we see that Ben Bateman will be the stand-in manager for Parker during this match, and that Parker still has Elvis and keeps him with him during the entire match. Now we come to our main event match. Kevin the Smasher Smets defending his IG championship against Robert the Spider Parker. Coming out of round 1, they are tied at 7. So I know we're only in the first round here, but things were already looking interesting because neither competitor were able to get a lead during this round. Even when there was a miss, the other competitor also got that question wrong too. So they were getting the same questions wrong and the same questions right. Now, that does partly explain Parker was trying to gain an advantage anywhere, and not surprisingly, during the movie quotes category, the question was asking for RoboCop, specifically 1987, which Parker indicated while Smets just wrote down RoboCop. Now, nothing in the question indicated that you needed to specify which RoboCop it was. It didn't specify a year, and it was not indicated on the desk that you needed to specify which one it was. So it was very fair for Parker to challenge based on needing to clarify which RoboCop you were referring to, because both the original and the remake had the exact same title. But because the question was asking for the original, Smets countered that he only needed to say RoboCop because that was the very first one with that title. Now, they came back and ruled that the challenge will not be accepted. They won't take away the point for Kevin Smets, but they also decided that they were not going to penalize Parker for challenging because it was a fair challenge. So he still retained his challenge, even though Smets did not lose his point, and the challenge was ultimately overruled. So would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I think a lot of it just came down to the fact that Smets gave a correct answer. He didn't fully clarify, but because it was not indicated in the question that you needed further clarification, they decided to keep things fair by electing to give Smets the points, but not penalizing Parker because it was a fair challenge, and still allowing him to challenge later on in the match. But would love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments. Back into the match for round 2, Smets, as the champion, defers to have Parker spin first, who takes animated on his first spin, and he sweeps the round for the full 10 points. On Smets' spin, he spins away from movie quotes and ends up taking Alien and Predator, where he comes away with 8 out of 10 points, checks down to multiple choice on one question, misses that question, but it is not stolen by Parker. So this gives Parker a gain of 2 points to now be up by 2, 17 to 15. In the betting round, Parker spins away from movie quotes. Per the new rules, he is allowed to do that, and ends up taking Alien and Predator. They both bet 3 points, both answer the question correctly, which means Parker is still up by 2, now 20 to 18. In the speed round, things get interesting. Smets misses the first question. Parker hits the second question. Smets misses a second question here on the third one. Neither attempt to answer question number 4, and Parker takes the fifth and final question, which means Smets loses 2 points and Parker gains 2 points in this round, which gives Parker an overall gain of 4 points to now be up by 6, 22 to 16. In our final round, Smets hits his 2-pointer in animated and a 3-pointer in Star Wars, but he still has to hit a 5-pointer in graphic novels to bounce it back over to Parker. But Smets misses the question, which gives Parker the win and the championship belt via TKO with a final score of 22 to 21, where Kevin Smets answered 14 of 21 questions for 67% accuracy and scored 54% of 39 available points. Robert Parker answered 15 of 19 questions for 79% accuracy and scored 73% of 30 available points. Oh my goodness, this was quite a match to watch. I loved every minute of it. Now, I will note for the record books, officially for a single division, Parker has 8 total knockouts, which now has surpassed his previous record that he had in the IG division Parker now has the most number of total knockouts of any player on any division. So as I said in round one, neither competitor was able to take a lead because not only were they answering the same questions, they were also missing the same questions, which then took us into round two with them being tied. And there were no wild cards on the wheel, which was the champion's choice. And Parker wasn't able to capitalize on a steal opportunity. However, he was able to now gain the lead going into the betting round, where as Parker was able to be the first one to spin, he also utilized his ability to respin the wheel on the betting round per the new rules for this year. And we saw that come into play and gave both of them a category where they were comfortable betting the full 3 points. And unsurprising for these caliber of competitors, they both got it correct. Now, the speed round is where things really started to fall apart a little bit for Smets, unfortunately, because he was getting a little ahead of himself and ended up buzzing in and answering questions a little too quickly and ended up missing 2 points, which really ended up taking a chunk out of his potential points earned and that percentage. If you noticed in my breakdown, it was pretty low for someone of this caliber, but think about it in terms of the speed round specifically. When you miss a question in the speed round, not only do you not gain the point, you also lose a point. So technically, by missing a question in the speed round, you are actually losing out on 2 potential points earned, which can really start adding up when you miss multiple questions inside of a speed round. So he missed 2 questions as far as accuracy goes, but he missed out on 4 potential points. But this is not the last that we're going to see of Kevin Smets this year for sure, because we get one final scene which gives us a tease of what might be coming in the Smashers' future. Kaiser comes to Smets after this loss and says that they should pivot directions and proposes a new faction member, the android Mark Andraco, who wants to come back after seeing everything that has happened with Roxy and everyone else. So he will join Kevin Smets as his teammate for a brand new team for the dungeon. So there's no news during this episode on when this match will happen, but be sure to look out because it seems like we're going to get a special treat in these last few weeks of matches where we're going to get to see the return of Mark Andraco to the MTS with a new teams partner, Kevin Smets, making his venture into the teams division. But that is going to do it for this week's episode. But don't worry, I'm going to go right back here next week bringing you all the action from the last episode of Friday Night Titans. As I said, this will be the last full episode of Titans that we get to see. We will be getting individual matches released during the next few weeks, leading up into October, which will be our spectacular final event. If you haven't already, make sure you hit like on this video, you're subscribed to the channel, and leave comments with your thoughts on the episode. The match breakdowns presented here will be posted on Twitter and Facebook. Until next time, for the entire Call to Action podcast crew, I'm your host, Megs, and this is After Action Report, signing off.